Hello everyone, this is Orlando from A Collector's Dream, and today I'm going to be talking pre-war. I've seen a lot of people, I'm not saying a lot, but I've seen people like Sports Card Dad, Mike, Junk Wax Hero, some of the bigger channels starting to talk some pre-war, and I thought I'd go ahead and share some thoughts on pre-war, show a little bit of pre-war, and kind of related back to what's happening today with fanatics taking over, and they will in a couple of years own everything. And I'll start off just by showing this rare album, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But what's happening now is fanatics is going to take over, and they're going to have full control, just like happened back with Topps. And Topps had control through the 50s, mainly, 60s, 70s, until, and basically there was very little innovation during that time when Topps was around, because everything was, I'll show you a little bit of this book as I go along. Everything was, and this is an example of the innovation that happened because of competition back in the 1880s. This is 1888. And that's why I'm talking about this and talking about the competition and stuff. So what happened back then, or today, or I was talking about Topps. Topps took over, really everything was the same. It's all the same cardboard, little different designs here and there, but nothing really, no real innovation until Upper Deck came along. And Upper Deck really revolutionized with the better stock of cardboard, paper, or almost plastic in that case, and the printing and the hologram and everything like that. And then after that, it just became almost a free-for-all, and then Topps began to innovate. All of a sudden, Topps now produced Stadium Club, and then they came out with Topps Finest. They could have done that. They didn't, until the competition came out. And all of that happened. And as you all know, you had the junk wax era where it was just junk. Everybody produced thousands and hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of stuff, all virtually the same. Then in the 90s, when the competition really kicked in, is where all the innovation took place. I mean, basically all the innovation, the big innovation from the jersey cards to the autograph cards and all of that stuff happened around, that era. And, that's been happening, and now Fanatics is taking over. So going back to these days, and I'll show you a little bit more of this book here, but I've shown this before. This is the innovation that happened back in the day. This is the tennis. So what happened back then? Well, in 1886, and there were cards before that, not really widely distributed. Many were just postcard type cards, but when they really began were the tobacco cards. And the tobacco cards started with Old Judge and Gypsy Queen cigarettes, and the N172 Old Judge cards. So they started in 1886 and they went all the way through 1889, similar to the T206 that did 1909 to 1911 type thing. So what happened is they would put in the cigarettes, they would put these coupons. And you could see here 50 of our certificates to secure the champion album, which is this one that you see right here. You need 50 of these. Or the Flower album, and whatever. So I'll talk about those in a minute. This expired July 1889. And what most people redeemed in this case were this, because you only needed 20 of these to redeem a cabinet card. See, it says 20, previously issued by us, we will mail you elegant cabinet photograph of any baseball player and club uniform belonging to the National American League from the printed list. And there was a list there that you could get that they gave out that showed you all, and there were over 200 players, and this is how you had those old Judge cabinet cards came from this. So in the cigarette pack, it would have the cigarettes, the card, the certificate, or the coupon, and then the cigarettes would be there in the little pack. And then the cards were like this. And that was back in the 18, they are, some of them they just put all 1887. But they were actually distributed during 3 different years. And the first ones that were distributed looked like this. Let me turn the page here, give you some more thing as we talk a little bit about history. So the first ones that were distributed looked like this. They had the old Judge here. These were the 1886. And they had the name. And in the back, they're all blank back. And so this is the 1887 old Judge. And this one is just like it came out of a pack. It would have come out looking just like that. This is an 8.5, a near mint. Not very few of them in this kind of condition, but you see what it was. It was basically a photograph that was stuck on to the cardboard. And that's how they did it. And then the following year, then not the following year, or sometimes they don't know exactly, but they did change the styles and all that. They changed a little bit to this. And you see the bottom is different. But they still had the old Judge like that. So I'll show you that. Keep that in the picture here. I don't want to touch the book too much. The book is super delicate. But I will turn the page. Give another look at the next. That's the boxing page of the book. So 1886, they started producing them like this. And then 1887, basically, they started producing them like this. And this is the King Kelly card. And these old Judge cards, they produced, there's about 5,000 total graded during that 3-year period. And this guy was the star of the day, King Kelly. And you can see $10,000 Kelly. He was given a $10,000 signing bonus to go from Boston to Chicago. Or Chicago from Boston, I don't remember exactly where. Went from Boston. So, and again, they're blank, they're all blank back. And this one was just stuck on an album. Like most of the cards that are on these years, they were stuck on albums. And they've produced so many different versions. Like this King Kelly, there are, I think, about 10 different versions. Most of them are the batting. The portrait is only a couple of them. And this is the one of the rare versions with the Chicago shirt. But they're so nice because it's a picture of them and you can see, the uniform and stuff, how they had to tie it up with, it actually almost had like a tie. So after that, and here's the coupons. See, I'll leave the coupon in the picture. Those coupons you got with the different, let me turn the page, and I'm going to get to this because this is where the competition kicked in. And Goodwin, which old Judge and Gypsy Queen, did this, started doing books like this and cards like this. That was after they produced these. So I'll talk about that. But after that, they produced them like this. So you see the difference there. Here, now they had the old Judge, a little bit more stuff on the bottom there. And you can see the difference here. So there's a book out there that you can get. And the other thing is they actually became a little bit bigger because in the beginning they were smaller. I'll show you here. They were a little bit smaller. In some of them than they are these later years. And these later years are now became more of the standard size for tobacco cards. See, actually compare them to the rest of the Goodwins after they started producing. So what happened after that is that Allen and Ginter came in 1887 and produced some color cards, lithograph cards. It was actually called chromolithography. And chromolithography is what we know, the process that we know about today, which is chrome. And all that was developed because of the competition from Allen and Ginter to Goodwin, that owned the Old Judge and Gypsy Queen and other brands. And there were other brands like Duke and some other smaller brands out there. But the main ones were Allen and Ginter, Goodwin, which owned the bigger brands, the Old Judges and the other ones, and Dukes and stuff like that. So when they produced their Allen and Ginter, and I don't have an Allen Ginter to show you, but it basically was white background with a small portrait in the middle, color portrait. Goodwin came up with this in 1888. That following year, he produced some of the most beautiful cards of the 1800s. He saw the competition there and he wanted to take over. And eventually he did. He bought out the competition. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So what happened was that he came out and really dominated with this. And Allen and Ginter also had books that they produced. And I showed a couple of those actually this week in a video earlier this week. I showed a couple of Allen and Ginter books. And you would order them through the coupons that were in the cigarettes. And then once these came out, Mr. Goodwin said, he came out and he wanted to really make a big splash. So he came out with all sports, just like Allen Ginter did. They produced an all sports set. But he really went all out and produced some of the more incredible artwork that Allen and Ginter did not produce. He went full-blown. These were handmade. Very few produced of these. So, and these, there's less than 50 of these that are graded in most of these. And some of these players, there's less than 20 that are known. Because again, this is over 135 years ago. So we're going way, 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 way back in time. But I wanted to talk about what the competition did. So Goodwin said, hey, these guys forgot football. And he put the first football card came out in 1888, produced by the Old Judge Gypsy Queen cigarettes by Mr. Goodwin. Now, of course, football back in the day was just a college sport. So the number one player back then was Beecher, and you can see he was the captain of the Yale football team. It says it right there, captain of the Yale football team. And Beecher was the Tom Brady of the day. I mean, they went undefeated. They had the best team out there, and of course they had the best coach. I can't remember, the guy who invented football, basically. And Beecher that year in 1888 threw 36 touchdowns with that round ball. Looks like almost a soccer ball. Threw 36 touchdowns. So Goodwin came out with these, and he decided to go all out with all the fanciness of these books that he put out. Also, there's some baseball books, there's the round albums and all of that stuff, which are pretty rare. So in the 1800s, basically it was controlled by those brands. Those were the main ones. But there were others that came out in 1890, in the 1890s. Mayo cut plug came out with the first football set. And then the year after that, the baseball set. And this was back in 1894. And this is George 80. George 80 was one of the Yale football players, but he's actually in the Tennis Hall of Fame. But they produced, and I'll show you that a little bit more. Let me go back to the baseball. So in 1895, Mayo cut plug produced one of the other sets. Really one of the main sets back in the 1890s, after the Old Judge and after the Goodwins. And this was 1894. This is the Cap Anson of the 1894 Mayo. And these were all black, like printed like on black cardboard. Here's another one. I'll show you this one in a minute. Like on black cardboard. And they were actually put in tins, actual tins of loose tobacco. So these are very, very tough to find in any condition at all. And the chipping, of course, you can see this was really, really chipped. But it was also a picture, a sepia picture, similar to this. Now, these cards were bigger because they were in a tin. So you can see the size difference on these. They were bigger. And then the football ones were some of the more, the rarest football card is in that Mayo set, and that is the anonymous card. And nobody knew who this person was until the 80s, where they found out that it was John Dunlop from Harvard. He was the best player in Harvard at the time. And the reason that this card is rare is because they forgot to print his name on the card. You see, let me show you the other one. See, this is 80, and it says 80 Yale on it. His opponent was Harvard, but you see they forgot to put the name on the John Dunlop. So it's always been called the anonymous card because they pulled it from the press early. And it's really considered to be the Honus Wagner of football cards. It's like the Honus Wagner, supposedly, that type of thing. So I'll go ahead and turn the page over here a little bit. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and show, I don't wanna turn too many more. This thing is too delicate, so I'll show you the back though. I'll show you the back of it. It's missing a little bit of things here, a little scratch on that, but other than that, it's from 1888. So once the Mayo cut plug and stuff started getting good because people were smoking more than ever, they were loving all the cards that were being produced at the time. I mean, things were really hopping. And then Mr. Goodwin said, you know, hey, this is a big business. I want to buy it out. And that's exactly what he did. He bought out all of the other companies. He bought out Dukes, he bought out Allen Ginter's and all the other companies. And he had the full rights to produce the tobacco cards. And he became what was then in the early 1900s, the American Tobacco Company. So he was the treasurer and kind of the CEO, kind of ran the show there. And some of the other guys, the Allen and Ginter owner and the Duke's owner, became kind of co-partners. But they took over and they dominated the market. And what they did was they produced the T206 cards. And the T206 were produced, they made so many different brands, and that's why it's so, different, because these are the T206s, and these were produced again from 1909 to 1911. Now, from this time on, they owned all the tobacco companies. You know, so you see the Polar Bear, they owned Polar Bear, they owned Piedmont, they owned Sweet Caporal, they owned them all. That's why all the cards, fronts, and pictures are all the same, because that was the monopoly that they had. But before I get to that, one of the first tobacco cards that were produced that were, you know, in the 1900s were the 1903 E107s. I mean, they were not tobacco cards. The first caramel cards that were produced back in the days were the 1903 E107, because what happened at that time was that the American Tobacco Company took over. So if you wanted to produce cards in the early 1900s, you'd have to produce them that are not in tobacco products. So that's where they started putting them in caramel, in different types of candy. And they went on to even give them out with ice cream. So these were this was basically like the first E cards, which were, and if you know the E and all that, it's the N's, for example. All of the N's are 19th century. Those are the 1800 cards. 19th century is the N's. The T are the tobacco cards. And the E are the candy and that era of cards. And then there's the strip cards and all that W and whatever stuff. But anyway, that's the, they started producing, and some of these have a back and some of these are without a back. But this was really the first set, and this was produced similar to the old style cards with pictures, actual pictures of the players. And there's a lot of big names in this, but they're very, very, very rare. These are 1903s are extremely difficult to find. And then after that, of course, came the T206s. And this was produced for 3 years in a row with, I don't remember exactly how many different backs, but somewhere along 30 different backs, because they were all different brands. So some of the brands, you know, they're rarer than others. You know, when you're talking about, you know, T206s, it's a whole crazy things, because some of the brands of those cigarettes didn't sell as much as the Piedmont or the Sweet Caporal. You know, and the Polar Bear, I brought that out because that was one of the few that was also in the scrap tobacco, similar to the scrap tobacco here. This was Mayo cup plug. This was the scrap tobacco for chewing and smoking. So, and they actually did produce a scrap tobacco of Thai cob. That's the one that has the Thai cob back, and that came in a tin of Thai cob tobacco, and that is the rarest. Technically, it's not a T206, but it does have the exact same picture of the other T206, which is the cob red. So this is the T205s, and then after the T205s, they came out. American Tobacco Company came out with, I think, one of the best sets that they came out with, and that was the T205s. And the T205s are one of the prettiest sets. So what happened again was the caramel cards started coming out. So they became a little more of a competition. You know, they had no competition in the other arena as far as the tobacco. They only had competition in the caramel cards or the other types of candy cards. So they did come up with a little bit fancier cards. But after this era, I mean, basically what happened after this is the tobacco cards were gone. And then the E-cards started coming out. All of the candy cards, the American Caramel, and the rest of those started coming out. So one last thing about these is that there's three different kinds with the minor leagues, but the difference is that the National League players all look like this, And the American League players all look like that. And the other good thing about this is it's the first set that has all of the stats from all of the different players. And again, since they owned all of the tobacco company, they had different backs. So this is the Honest Long Cut. This is the Piedmont back. Now for the T205, it's not that big of a deal for the back as much, but they are rarer backs also in the T205s. So I wanted to share a little bit of history, and then, you know, what happens after these cards come out. Then you get the strip cards. The tobacco cards are pretty much gone at that stage. They all become candy cards, and the caramel cards come out. And if you want to know more about that, you know, there's a great video that I did with John Mangini on the Four Collectors channel. Four Collectors. Check that out. That was talking about the cards from the 20s. And then after that, of course, the competition really started again with the 40s, with the play balls and the Goudies, and then they started producing a lot back in that end, and they began with from candy to gum, the gum cards. And that's where we got to top. So, well, we get 25 minutes here. I didn't want to make the video that long, but I wanted to give you a good idea and a quick talk about pre-war, a little bit of the history about the pre-war cards, and show you some of my pre-war collection. So just want to thank everybody for watching my videos. Hope you appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And anything else you want me to cover, leave me a comment. Let me know. What do you think? Are you guys getting into pre-war? Do you like the pre-war stuff? Is it interesting, fascinating? The other one that did a video on that lately was Greg, Midlife Crisis. He also did a video about pre-war. And I'm just glad to see that people are finally talking about the history of baseball and the history of sports cards in this case. And that's what this is, the history of the sports cards. Over 140 years ago, these cards were printed. So, awesome stuff. Thanks, guys, for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. It's Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Thanks for watching.